Yes, sir. Okay. Fly away. Oh, I had it locked in from last turn.
Oh yeah, you had the tail lock. So Cam 1 and 2, if you guys see me or Indy in your shot, just grab a different shot. Definitely try to avoid that. I like that shot. Alright, we're gonna open it with 1, push to 8. Ready 1. And dissolve 1.
What's up, Rocky? How are we today? Hey, it's so good to see all of you. I'm excited that we get to worship together as a church, so let's lift our voice to Jesus.
That's praying.
Let's surrender to Him this morning.
Chris.
Let's sing out.
Intro.
Ready 3.
Come on, as one church, we sing this together. Lead me to the broken.
Now ready 3. Not yet. Dissolve 3.
Lead me to the broken, to the widow, to the orphan.
Ready 2.
Meet me in the margins.
Ready 2.
With the leper.
Dissolve 2.
And the lonely.
1, we're gonna, yeah. Ready 1.
I don't care what it costs.
Dissolve 1.
I wanna be where you are.
Hold the shot. Ready 4.
Come on, sing that again. Oh,
Dissolve
I
4.
don't care what it costs.
Ready 2. Yeah,
I
reset
wanna
2.
be where you are.
Ready 2. Dissolve 2.
Come on,
Ready
sing it
3.
out. Good shepherd
Dissolve 3.
of my soul.
Ready 4. Actually, ready 1. Dissolve 1. Hold that shot forward. We're gonna 1. Pan off to the right and up as you come in. That's 1. Go up and to the right. Ready 4. Dissolve 4. Oh, I like that light in there. 4.
Wherever you
3. We
are,
got that shot.
that's where I wanna go.
Ready 3. Dissolve 3. Ready 1.
That's where I wanna go.
Dissolve 1.
Wherever you are,
2. We
that's
got
where I wanna
Andy in that shot, so let's do that. Ready 4.
That's right. Come on, sing it out. Send me to the nations.
3.
Nice catch.
So
Chris.
send me
Ready 4.
to the
Dissolve 4.
nations, to the
3.
hurting,
We got that
where the
shot.
pain is.
Ready 2.
Lead me to
that'll
the
work.
neighbor,
Ready 2.
into
Dissolve 2.
friendship, with compassion.
Ready
Oh,
3.
I don't care
I'm
what
gonna go
it
to
costs.
Ready 3.
I wanna
Take
be
3.
where you are.
Ready 1. Start to move
Oh,
1.
I
Dissolve.
don't
Take
care what it
1. Hold that
costs.
shot 4. 1.
I
Go
wanna
up.
be where
Up as you
you
go up over his head and rack out. Ready 4. Take 4. Ready 2. Start to move 2. Ready 2. Dissolve 2. Or take 2. Hold that shot 3.
Wherever you
Go ahead and go
lead
up.
me, I
Take 3. Ready
will
3.
go.
Take 3. Hold that
Surely
shot
your
4.
goodness
Ready 1.
and
Start
kindness
to move 1.
and
Take 1.
mercy
Ready
follow
4.
me, and I know
Take 4. Ready 3.
wherever you are, that's where I wanna
Reset 3.
go.
Sorry. Okay, now. Never mind. Ready 1.
Oh, that's
Take
where
1.
I wanna go.
Hold that shot 3. We'll get to it.
Wherever you are, that's where I wanna go.
Ready 3 and dissolve 3. Ready 4. Dissolve 4.
Remember just one.
That's where
Start
I
your
wanna
move.
go.
Reset 1. Ready 2. Dissolve 2.
Come on, sing this out where you are.
Ready 1.
Cause
Dissolve 1.
where you are, the blind will see, the deaf will hear, the voiceless sing.
3. I'm not keen on that
Wherever you
backside
go,
shot.
I'm going.
Ready 4.
Wherever
Ready
you
2.
go, I'm
Push
going.
him Indy 2. Ready 2.
Where you are, the lost are found, the dead are raised.
Go up and
the
go over her
humble
shoulder.
crowd.
Audience right.
Wherever you go, I'm going.
Ready 4.
Wherever you go,
Dissolve
I'm
4.
going. Where
Four
you
slide.
are is where
Yeah,
I'll
that'll
be.
work. 3.
Where
Reset
you
on that.
move,
Ready
the
1.
church will sing.
Dissolve
one.
Wherever you go, I'm going.
Ready, three.
Wherever you go,
Dissolve
I'm
three.
going. Wherever you go, I'm going.
That's what
I'm going. I'm going.
Ready, two. Start to push two. Dissolve two. Oh, I should took it off just a little. Two, come over to Dean. That should come in.
Wherever you lead
hang on, ready, one,
me,
dissolve
I
one.
will go.
Hold that shot, four.
Build.
Surely goodness
Andy, I told you about
and
the
your
coffee.
kindness and your mercy follow me.
Ready,
I
four.
know
Dissolve four.
wherever you
Ready,
are,
three.
that's where I want to go.
Dissolve three. Ready, one.
Good shepherd
Dissolve one.
of my
Two, start your
soul.
motion. Ready, two. Dissolve two.
Wherever you lead me,
One, let's push
I
15. I never mind, we got
will
four.
go.
Ready, four. Two, go ahead,
Surely your
come in and rack out.
goodness and kindness
Thank
and
you.
your mercy
One, hold that shot.
follow
How many
me,
sides do you
and
feel?
I know
Okay, thank you. Ready, four.
wherever you
Dissolve four.
are, that's where I want to go.
Ready, one. Dissolve one. Oh.
Oh, that's where I want to go.
Ready, three. Dissolve
Wherever
three.
you are, that's where I want to go.
Hold that shot, one. Ready, one. Dissolve one.
Oh, that's where I want to go.
Just hold on to that one.
Wherever you are,
What's that?
that's where I want to
go.
go.
Two, 3, 4.
Amen.
Second
I'm going to read
verse,
just a little bit
third
from
service
Psalm
will have a
23.
nail.
It says this: The Lord is my shepherd. I lack
Third service
nothing.
will have it nailed.
He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters.
I'm a fourth
He
service.
refreshes my soul. When was the
Yep,
last time
okay.
your soul was refreshed? I know for me, this summer has been pretty crazy. Now, I go into every summer and I think it's going to slow down, it's going to be good. And it just ramped up. It got busier and busier.
Try getting old.
My wife and I, we decided to remodel like a
See what
big
happens.
chunk of our house. And so we've been grinding on that. We have a baby coming in a few months, which is super exciting. Oh, yeah, thank you. It's super exciting. But at the same time, it's like, oh, man, this is getting crazy. And so there's just thing after thing after thing. And before you know it, you feel drained really quickly. And you guys can fill in the blank with all those things. I know there's a lot going on for every single one of us. So I would just want to ask again, when was the last time your soul was refreshed? We have so many drains in our life. But the amazing thing is that we have a good shepherd who loves us, who cares about us, who is right here with us right now. Later on in Psalm 23, it talks about walking through the valley of the shadow of death. And God never leaves our side, even in the middle of that. So it's my prayer for us today that maybe today is the beginning of a new refreshing season. Maybe today is the start of a refresher for us. It doesn't mean the busyness ends, but it means that we rest in the goodness of God. So today, I want to sing that chorus we just sang a little bit more. Good shepherd of my soul. But the first time we sing it, I just want you to listen to these words. I almost never ask us to not sing, but I'm going to this one time. Just listen to the words, and then we're all going to sing it together. Good shepherd of my soul, wherever you lead me, I will go. Surely your goodness and your kindness and your mercy
read that whole
follow me, and I know
Ready, three.
wherever you
Dissolve
are,
three.
that's where I want to go. That's right. As one church, let's sing that out together. Good shepherd, good
Start your motion.
shepherd
Let's see what
of
we got.
my soul.
Ready, one.
Wherever you lead
start a push to
me,
something. Ready,
I
two.
will go.
Not to Andy. Ready, two. Dissolve
Surely
two.
your goodness
Go over
and
to Dave.
kindness
Go over to
and your
Dave.
mercy
What?
follow me,
Keep going, Dave.
and
Keep going.
I know
There you go.
I thought you were talking to me. I was like,
wherever
what?
you are, that's where I want to go.
You're good.
Come on, let's sing it one more
Yeah,
time.
that's
Good
what we wanted
shepherd.
right there. That's what we wanted to.
Good shepherd
Ready,
of
four.
my soul.
That's it.
Wherever you lead me, I
That'll work. One. Ready?
will
4.
go.
Dissolve 4.
Surely your goodness and your kindness
One, you want to try to wrap
and
that
your
in.
mercy follow
Ready? 1.
me, and I
Dissolve
know
2.
wherever
Start your
you
push.
are,
Ready? 2.
that's where I want to go.
Dissolve
1.
Amen. That's right. Let's
Nice.
keep singing together.
Intro.
Let's keep
3, 4,
responding to
5,
Jesus
6.
for what he's done. The fact that he's never left us.
2. Yeah,
He's
3.
with us right
we
now.
got that shot, I think. And now both you guys change. Oh well, we'll get something here. Is this the
All the time.
Mindy song?
Sing all the
Nope.
time.
Verse 3, 4, 5, 6.
All this time
Ready? 3.
you've been right by
Dissolve 3.
my side.
Hold that shot 4. What is that?
The cloud by day, the glow of fire by
No, we got that shot 1. Ready? 4. Dissolve 4.
Pre-chorus 3, 4,
Why would
5,
I
6.
doubt you? Why would I
Tried not to
fear?
in rehearsal, and he's like, I just
Proving
cannot do
you're
it.
faithful,
what?
proving
The
you're
vocal line
near.
with
I
Dave
know
follows.
that all this time
Ready? 2.
you've been
Start your push 2.
right
Dissolve 2.
by my
Thanks for holding that 4. Sorry, it was a long shot.
Chorus 3, 4,
You're
5, 6.
unloving, patient, faithful,
Ready? 1.
God.
Start a full back 1.
And your
Dissolve 1. Oh, okay.
kindness
Go ahead and pull back 1. Hold that shot 3. Ready? 3.
Where there should have
Dissolve
been
3.
a grave, you
2. Start to
made
push.
a
Ready?
way. You always
2.
make a way.
Ready? 4.
You're
Dissolve 4.
unloving, patient,
That'll work
4, 5, 6.
God.
Instrumental
Ready?
3,
1.
4, 5, 6.
Dissolve 1. Ready? 2. Start your push 2.
Never far
Dissolve
away.
2.
Verse 3, 4, 5, 6.
You're never far away. You're
kinda
never
dark.
late.
It's a little dark on this TV.
Hands of
whatever.
heaven
Sure, whatever it is, it's
hold me
feelings fall. Ready? 4.
as I wait. Whoa.
Pre-chorus 3.
'Cause you're the provider,
I like that.
forever enough.
Oh my gosh.
Proving you're
Yeah.
faithful,
Keep going. Ready?
proving your
1.
love.
Dissolve
I
1.
know that all this time
2. Start your push again. We'll push
right
it
by
in. Hold that shot 3. Actually, we're going to go to 3. Ready? 3. Dissolve
Come on,
3.
sing it out. You're unloving,
Yeah, that's a great shot too. I like that shot.
patient,
Hold that 2.
faithful,
Ready? 1.
God.
Reset 1.
And your
Reset. Yeah, there you go. Ready? 1.
kindness
Dissolve 1.
leads us through
Yeah, that was pretty. Ready?
and
Keep going. Keep going to your left. 1.
where
Keep
there should
going.
have been
Yeah,
a
way over
grave,
into the oblivion. Ready?
you
4.
made a way.
Dissolve
You
4. That was
always
a good name
make
spot.
a way.
Oh, wow. Keep going. Ready? 3. Dissolve 3.
Patient,
Ready? 2. Ready? 2. Start to push 2. Dissolve 2. Push it
Bridge
down. Ready? 2.
3, 4, 5,
So
6.
I'm never looking back. No, I'm never
when we got that shot.
looking back. Right where my faith
Or we'll
went
use that in a
then.
sec.
Your grace begins. I'm never looking back.
We'll use
Drums.
1. We'll
So
use that as
I'm never
another shot.
looking back.
2. Let's rack that out. Ready?
No,
1.
I'm never
Dissolve 1.
looking back.
Hold that
You're
shot.
right
3.
here in front
Start a full back
of
1.
me.
Ready? 3.
With all I
Dissolve 3.
need, I'm never looking
Live.
back.
Yeah, just
So
reset.
I'm
We're
never looking back.
Ready? 4.
No,
Dissolve 2.
I'm
Dissolve 4.
never looking back. Right where my
Ready?
faith
2.
went
Start to
then.
push 2.
Your
Hold that shot
grace
1. Dissolve
begins.
2.
I'm never looking
Go ahead and go up over his shoulder, audience right, and rack out 2.
'Cause I know that
Got into those lights. Ready? 1. Dissolve 1.
right by
Hold that shot 3.
my side.
1. Start a full back. Cam left. Ready? 3. Ready? 3. Dissolve 3.
By day,
Hold that shot 4. We'll use that. Coming back 1. Ready? 4. Dissolve 4. dissolve two.
Like those folks.
And I know that all this time you've been right by
Something I was supposed to pay attention to.
3, 4,
You're
5, 6.
unloving, patient,
Oh, that's a good shot, 2, 3. As well as, that's a good shot, 2, 4.
in your
3 slides and then a spin.
kindness.
Thank you. Ready, 4.
Leads us through
Dissolve 4.
sea
Ooh,
and
nice
song,
rack,
where there should have been a grave.
One, let's push to her.
You made a way. You
We're gonna go to 3. Ready,
always
3.
make
Dissolve
a
3.
way. You're
1. Reset 1.
unloving, patient,
Are we near the end?
Yes, this is the last slide.
Okay, we're gonna push to Mindy, right?
2.
Ready, 2.
Bridge.
Ready, 1.
Breakdown.
Start your push. Dissolve 1.
There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb
Before you
up,
hit that.
coming after me.
And go ahead and just hold that shot
No
1.
wall
Hold it
you
tight.
won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming
Or you can
after
hang on to that. We'll
Bridge.
come to you in
Build.
just a second.
There's no shadow you won't
Bridge
light
shot,
up,
Mindy.
mountain
You
you
wanna grab
won't
this
climb
arm?
up, coming after me.
There you go. Ready, 3.
There's no wall you won't kick down,
Ready, 2.
lie you
Start your
won't
push, 2.
tear down, coming
Dissolve
after
2.
me.
And then we'll come to 3. Yeah, reset
No
3.
shadow you won't
Ready, 3.
light up, mountain
Dissolve
you won't
3.
climb up, coming after
that one on
me.
There you go.
There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't
Ready,
tear
1.
down,
Start your
coming
motion
after
1.
me.
Dissolve 1. Start a pull
There's no
back 1.
shadow you won't
And then
light
we'll come
up,
to 4.
mountain you
Pull back
won't
1.
climb up,
Yeah, go
coming
for
after me.
1. Ready, 4. Hand left 1. And
There's
you
no
come back.
wall
Ready,
you
4.
won't kick down,
Dissolve 4.
lie you won't tear down, coming after
3.
me.
Hold that shot. Ready, 3. Ready, 1. Start your push to Dane 1. Ready, 1. Dissolve 1. Hold that shot 3. We're coming in. Coming in 1. Go into that light audience right. Rack out. Ready, 3. Dissolve 3. What?
No, that's your problem.
Okay. Don't do that. Thank you. Ready, 4. Dissolve 4. That's you. Reset. Reset. Ready, 2. Start your motion. Dissolve 2. Cool. We got Shan coming up. Yep, 2. Keep pulling back. Ready, 4. Dissolve 4.
You're gonna be coming out from house left.
Thank you. Ready, 1. Dissolve 1.
Yeah, this title slide also.
Yeah,
And if you're in the
still got
room, you can have a seat. I know you don't want
Alright,
to,
it's up.
like you want to keep going because that's so good. But
Wow,
it's good to
that's
see
not
all
so
of you
dark.
here this morning.
Good
We're gonna
job,
get ready
Caleb.
and just take communion together. And I want you to think about this one thought.
Snarl.
Last night, I
Alright,
was
let me know when you want me to
in a
send the
gym
DVD slide.
rebounding for my kids,
Oh,
which is
okay.
a
Did
usual
you
thing
do
for our
Shams?
family.
I
We play
did.
a lot of
I
basketball.
was snarling it.
And my
Caleb, I missed
13-year-old
it.
was shooting, and I was rebounding
out.
for him. And he's a
Thanks for the
great little
reminder.
shooter.
There you
I
go.
mean, just
Got it.
better at that age than I could have ever dreamed of being. And I was rebounding for him, but this particular night, the ball was not falling.
Nice
like,
work.
It was like, honestly,
Mobile
guys,
cams.
he couldn't
Nice
hit the
work,
broadside of a
stationary
barn.
cam.
He's not in the service, so I can say that. But it was just off, and he was getting down on himself. You know how that happens when you're just a little off at something, kind of that voice that starts running in your head, and then that voice, when you get more and more frustration, comes out of your head, and you start saying out loud, and he's like, "Dad, I just can't hit anything, and I was a terrible shooter. I don't know what's wrong with me." And I'm looking at him, and so his sister comes over, and she just gives a little instruction, a little correction, helps him out. He's not having any of it. Maybe it's his sister, maybe it's just he don't want it right now. And there was one moment he's just down on his knees, he's got the ball, and he's just like, "Dad, I'm terrible. I just don't know what's going on. I just can't shoot. I'm terrible." And so I walk over and I just grab him. I just grabbed him by the shoulder and just saw in that moment that he needed something. And it wasn't that he was a bad shooter. He's a great little shooter. But he just needed to be reminded of who he was. And so I just grabbed him on the shoulder and I just looked at him and I said, "Jake, but dude, you're a great shooter. Like, you're a great little baller. You're a great kid, man. I believe in you. You got this. Like, let's do this. You're a better shooter than I ever dreamed of being. Let's just turn around. Let's get back out there. You got this. You just tell yourself you're a great shooter. Shoot that ball." He walked back out there, and I'll be honest, he didn't like shoot the lights out, but it was so much better. Like he just started hitting shots, and all of a sudden you see him shaking it off. You see
So
his
one,
shoulders
this will
back
be
a
a
little
lock
bit.
and rack.
And you know, there's just something different when somebody else just breathes something into you and tells you who you are and what you can do and what they believe about you. And by the end of the night, he's laughing, he's joking around, he's as loose and fluid as you could be, and that ball's just going in the bucket. And I think there are moments for us that we just need to be reminded that no matter what we say to ourselves, that voice in our head throughout the week, that we're not that. And there's this thing called Scripture where no matter what you think about it, it is a story of God just saying and proving, seeing how we needed to be shepherded in our lives and coming and just meeting our biggest need and saying, hey, no. Don't listen to that voice. Listen to my voice and let me tell you who you are. You're loved. You're chosen. I've adopted you. I've forgiven you. I died for you. I gave everything for you. You're going to be with me. I'm with you always. I mean, it just goes on and on and on of this God that doesn't just instruct us. He doesn't just correct us. He just, first of all, tells us, I love you. And when you know you're loved, man, it just changes everything about who you are. So today, as we pull out the bread and the juice, I want you to be reminded of what that is for, that we are reminded every time we gather together, we take communion, remembering how much we're loved. And how much God was willing to go to the lengths that he was willing to go, send his son to die on a cross because he loved you and he wanted you to know what he thought about you. Not about what you think about yourself, not about what anybody else thinks, but what he thinks about you. So today, as you take communion, here's what I want to encourage you to do. I'm going to give you about 30, 40 seconds. And I just want you to thank him for the cross, but then I want you to ask him, God, how do you want me to shepherd me today? Like, what do you see that I need to hear, that I'm telling myself this wrong? What do you need to say to me? And then you just listen. And then let's go live that way.
Ready,
Take a few moments and we'll pray together.
Solve CD. Let's see. We'll come back to one. Sorry, it didn't rack out there.
This progression starts
Right
with
phase.
so we'll try and hang out. Hit the one.
Yeah, you've ruined the entire service because of that right there.
Yeah, I know. Typical.
Don't worry about it.
Finish this progression.
Ready,
Let's
one.
pray together.
Dissolve one.
Father, I know what I need to hear today, and I just thank you for saying it. And Father, I pray that we would believe that you love us, that you are with us, that you believe in us. And Father, I pray that we would live in just a situation of understanding we're loved. We live different when we know we're loved. And so God, today, as we listen to Matt bring the message
too, you're
today,
gonna
I pray
pick
that we
up,
will
Matt.
shift even the focus from us
Let's pick him
and
up
shift the
with
focus
your
to others that
wide
need to be
shot.
loved by
So
you. And so God,
his
speak
shin's
powerfully
up.
through him and encourage our
So
hearts
you'll
today.
still have the
It's in
wide
Jesus'
shot.
name that we pray.
But we'll come to
Amen.
the narrow shot.
Amen.
Ready,
Okay, here's what I want to do.
Alright,
Both
title slide.
campuses, all right? Just want to see if you're awake. But if you're
Easy.
excited to be at church this morning, you love Jesus, make some
One
noise right now,
comeback
man. If
just-
you're just ready to
there
be
you
here.
go.
Okay. Yes. Okay, good. 9 watts, you
shoot.
didn't cheer.
We're
That
gonna
was
have to
incredibly
switch
awkward. All right, so anyways, I hope you
Okay.
cheered. If you're
Keys
hanging out
out.
with us online this morning, thanks for taking an hour of your
All
Sunday
right, so
morning,
this
spending it with us.
first,
And we are finishing
slide will
up
be,
our
for the
series that
one.
we have
Okay,
entitled Purple Cow. And the reason why we've entitled this series Purple Cow is because none of you have
I
ever
need to
seen a purple
switch
cow. But if
somehow.
you did, you would remember it and you would tell people what you saw. Now, a lot of you over the last 4 weeks have been sending me pictures of purple cow things. Somebody
How far in
actually
is that
dropped off
slide?
a purple cow stuffed animal at my front door. And they said, look, we found one.
it the
And,
4 to
and
1
you've been
slide?
sending me
Yeah, for
pictures
the
and all
one
kinds of
slide.
things. But I'm just telling you, if you
It's gonna
really
come up after,
saw, like if you're driving home today and you saw
talks about
a purple
Jesus
cow,
would
you would
spend so
stop,
much
you'd
of
take
his
pictures
life-
of it, you would post
life
it, you know,
loving
one.
and then you go to lunch,
It'll
you
be
tell
about
people
that.
All right,
what you
ready,
saw.
one.
Because if you saw a purple cow, that would be pretty
And he's
remarkable.
really only on paragraph
Dissolve
one
You
one.
still.
don't usually see a purple cow. And remarkable
have to
things,
do
here's
that,
the
but we
deal.
did it.
Remarkable things
Okay.
are remembered and shared. The remarkable stories of your life, you will remember them. And you always just tend to share them. These are the stories that last a lifetime. And I would
How's a
argue
purple cow got
that
in
maybe
for
the
it?
most remarkable movement
Back 10,
in the history of the
15
world
years ago.
is the church. I mean, think about it. The church launched 2,000 years ago, and we're still talking about it. In fact, if you're not a Christian, let me just say this. I'm glad you're here. Thanks for hanging out with us. I think it's cool that you would come and be part of a church gathering, and you might even be a little skeptical. You might think everybody in this room are hypocrites, and I totally get all that, and there's wounds and hurts from the past with church. I know those are real things. I'm just glad you're here. And I would just say this, like, isn't it interesting?
You can.
Isn't it interesting
gonna
that
ask
even
you,
if
I'm
you're
sending
not,
now.
you know,
Yeah,
a
you can
follower of
stage
Jesus,
that.
even if you don't
There you
believe,
go.
if you don't even believe
Thanks
this
for
whole thing
asking,
is true, that you
Once in a
still
while.
know the name
Actually, quite frequently.
of
I
a guy
forget
who
about-
lived 2,000 years ago, who was a carpenter, who started a movement,
Oh,
I mean,
you have a big
halfway
red light,
around
though,
the
that
world
I
in
do.
Galilee,
Red and green, yes.
who never traveled more than 30 miles
That helps.
from his home.
It does.
And 2,000 years
Those
later,
technical whiz kids.
you know his name. I think that's pretty remarkable. I mean, I don't know the name hardly of anybody who was alive 2,000 years ago, and yet we just can't get away from his name. And so it begs the question, what did he do? I mean, what did Jesus do that was so remarkable? What did he do that people just refuse to forget about it? And they keep telling, people about it from generation to generation. Now, spoiler alert, he did one really big thing, and if you've never been to an Easter service, I mean, one of the biggest things we talk about is that, Jesus, he died on a cross. And then the story goes, 3 days later, he came back from the dead. Now, that's a pretty purple cow story, isn't it? Have you ever seen somebody die and come back from the dead? No. But if you did, you would remember it, and you would share it. And we've been sharing that story for 2,000 years. But here's what we'll talk about today, because, see, even before that kind of purple cow moment in the life of Jesus, he just lived in such a way that stood out. I mean, he stood out from the crowd. He lived his life so differently than everybody else, how they lived their life, that we're still reading and telling the stories of how he lived. Now, he ended the whole deal with a huge bang and just, a remarkable story that we call Easter. But even before that, and here's what we'll talk about today. One of the things that Jesus did so incredibly well is that he was able to see people. He was able to see people. And not just like his people, but like see people. I mean, he lived his life in such a way that he was able to see people and he would meet the needs of people. Life is busy and it's chaotic and there's things going around. And even 2,000 years ago, Jesus, he is somehow able to focus in, not just on some people, but all people. And when you read the stories of his life through the Gospels, you see that he just kind of lived his life meeting, one person at a time, meeting one need at a time. Just how he lived. Didn't make excuses. Always had, he would slow down for people. And he would just meet one need at a time. I think it's one of the reasons why we talk about him still to this day, because his view of people was so significantly different than probably how a lot of us view people. And so we've kind of been working through our church values in this series, and last week Sean, he touched on this last value. We're going to touch on it today, but one of our church values is for the one. For the one. And we get that value just by reading the stories of how Jesus lived. He was for the one. Well, who's the one? Well, the one was,
don't mind me. I'm just
somebody
talking.
who had yet to discover
Ready
who
to.
Jesus was, and Jesus was for them.
Ready one.
Jesus was for the one who had needs.
Go one.
They didn't have food. Jesus was for that one.
Thank you, Nail.
If the person had an
That was
ailment, Jesus was for that one.
It works.
If there was somebody who had less than what
Lord,
they
smack
needed,
me
Jesus
upside
was
the head.
for that one. Jesus lived his life in such a way. It was very clear. He was
And the
he was
first
for
Bible verse
the one.
isn't
He was for the
a
one.
bit,
Okay.
Who had a
but
need.
it's 14:13. So whenever
Spiritual.
you want me to.
You can prep.
Physical.
You can prep.
And
it.
Jesus was for
Thank you.
for that one. And so today we're going to look at one of those, examples of how Jesus was for the one. If you have your Bibles, you can turn to Matthew 15, and we're going to read, kind of go between Matthew 14 and 15. We're going to look at the story of kind of this season of life for Jesus, where he's literally just meeting the needs of people, one at a time. Now, here's what I think most of us would say. You don't even have to be a Christian to agree with this, but if we took a poll in here, I think most of us would say that we're in favor of living the kind of life that Jesus lived. Especially when it comes to, how he cared for and was meeting the needs of people around him. I think most of us would be like, yeah, I think that's a good thing. I would like to, live that kind of life. But if we're really honest this morning, how often do we actually see the needs of the people around us, but we talk ourselves out of meeting the needs? I don't know if you're like me. I'm really good at making excuses or finding excuses. So while that's not my problem, I see it, but I don't have time for it. I mean, we want to be someone who meets needs, but it's tough. I mean, again, let's just be real. It's tough, really, to meet the needs of the people around us because we ourselves are very busy people. We're going from point A to point B, and we don't always have the time or the energy, you know? And so a lot of times we see a need, but we know that that need's going to cost us some energy, some time, and if we're just honest, we just go past it because, we've got somewhere to be, we got kids to pick up, and we got kids to feed, and we got jobs to go work. And if you're a parent, you get this, don't we live in this world like it just seems that somebody's always in need of something, If you're a parent, you get it, like there's always something, isn't it? You meet a need, and then there's, 10 more needs right behind that need. We're tired, and there's this exhaustive list of people who could use your help. And in Matthew chapter 15, I think that Jesus is in a season of life just like that. I think he's really tired, and I think there's an incredible amount of needs that are happening. In fact, even in Matthew chapter 14, the chapter starts out with Jesus receiving some incredibly bad news. His cousin, who he grew up with and did ministry with, a guy named John the Baptist, he gets news that John has died. He was beheaded by Herod. And Jesus receives the news, and this has got to be really tough news because, John the Baptist and Jesus, they were tight. They're not just friends, they're family. They grew up together, they did ministry together. In fact, John baptized Jesus, hence we call him John the Baptist. Close relatives, close friends. And so Jesus is hearing this news, and it's weighty, and it's heavy, and he does what probably all of us would do. Look at this, Matthew 14 and verse 13. And then when Jesus heard what had happened to his bro, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. Hearing of this, the crowds followed him on foot from the towns. And so you get what's happening, right? Jesus, he just needs some time.
I'll send
He
you
just
the next
got some
one. It's
incredibly
14,
bad
14.
news
Okay.
about his friend and close family member. But there's still needs. The crowd is still following him because they have needs. And look how he responds. Verse 14, and when Jesus landed and saw, and that's going to be a key idea this morning, when he saw the large crowd, he had compassion on them. And he healed their sick. But he needed some time, but he didn't get it. But he still met needs. And then right after this, in Matthew chapter 14, we have the story where Jesus, this crowd has showed up. He's meeting the needs of people, and now they have more needs because now these people need food.
Yep.
And this is the story of the feeding of the 5,000, which is probably more like 15,000. Because that 5,000 is just counting the men. So when you put in children and ladies in that number, it's probably close to 15,000 people. Jesus is feeding now thousands of people. And then Jesus does get alone for a little bit while his disciples are crossing the Sea of Galilee. Again, he goes up to a mountaintop, and this is the whole story where Peter tried, Jesus is walking on water, he's doing Jesus stuff, and then Peter tries to walk on water, and he's successful for a couple of steps and almost dies. And then we get to verse 34. And then when they had crossed over, they landed in Gennesaret. And when the men of that place recognized Jesus, they sent word to all the surrounding country. And people brought all of their sick to him and begged him to let the sick just touch the edge of his cloak. And all who touched it were healed. He just spends the whole chapter. He's just, meeting the needs of people. He's feeding people and he's healing people.
Go on.
And then we get to chapter 15, where I'm just telling you, Jesus has to be
15,
spent,
1 and 2, it's one side.
He's lost his close friend, he's been healing people, and, dude's been doing ministry. He's just been busy. And then at the beginning of Matthew chapter 15, Jesus is confronted by the religious leaders over a matter of tradition. So just get this for a second. The whole chapter of 14, he's just been, pouring out energy, and he's just doing miracle after miracle, and he's feeding thousands of people, and dude just needs a nap, Then you get to the beginning of Matthew chapter 15, verse 1, and then look what it says. Then some Pharisees and teachers of the law, these are the religious leaders of the day, they came to Jesus from Jerusalem, meaning like these were the guys at the top. They came down and they asked Jesus, verse 2, Jesus, why do your disciples break the tradition of elders? They don't wash their hands before they eat.
Ready, one, go.
And
one.
you just, if I'm Jesus, I'm like, really? That's what you want to talk about? You've been hanging around a little bit. We've been feeding thousands of people, and
All
we've
right,
been
the next
healing
one's,
paralyzed
15,
people. We've
29.
been,
Got it,
giving
thanks.
sight to blind people. And then you're going to show up, and this is the conversation that you want to have about why my disciples don't wash their hands. Now, they probably should wash their hands, but they're not washing their hands. Jesus, we see your disciples, they're not doing what we think they should do, and you just got to know this. While these religious leaders might say this is a law, it's not. They've taken some Old Testament law and kind of manipulated it and formed it into what they wanted it to say. And so they come up with Jesus, and they go, Jesus, you know the tradition for religious people, especially religious leaders. And you claim to be the Son of God, and so why aren't you holding, your disciples to the standard where they should be washing their hands before they eat? Now, just think about this for a sec. People's lives are being changed, and the religious leaders want to talk about washing hands. And sometimes we just got to own this. If you're church people, we just got to own this. Sometimes in church, we get so caught up in traditions and arguing over preferences, we miss the whole point. We miss the whole thing. So you don't miss this. At the beginning of chapter 15, the religious leaders are focused on their traditions and practices, and Jesus is focused on broken and hurting people. And so as a church, we just got to be wise enough and smart enough to know there's going to be moments where we're going to need to decide what we're going to be about. We have choices to make. We have so much time and so much energy and so much money, and we get to choose how we invest it. And these religious, leaders, they didn't see the needs of the people.
These religious peeps.
They didn't see
I know, I saw that.
And you know what they saw?
He didn't say peeps.
Dirty
though, did
hands.
No, he did
And it
not.
took their attention away of the most important thing. And so Jesus, when you read it, you can read it this week, and next couple of verses later, Jesus has very little patience for this conversation. He calls these religious leaders hypocrites. And he
Ready,
moves
two.
on. There's more important things to be about. And then verse 29 in chapter 15,
to.
Jesus left there, and he went along the Sea of Galilee, and then he went up on a mountainside to take a nap because the dude is tired, And so he goes to this remote area. He's
Ready,
going to
one.
rest a little bit.
Go
But the
one.
place that
All
he
right,
chooses here
15, 30,
for his
31.
nap is
Got it.
very interesting. I'm going to talk about that in a
Got it,
second.
thanks.
But then verse 30.
Ready,
it just keeps
Go
happening.
two.
Verse 30, and then great crowds came to him, bringing the lame and the blind and the crippled
We
and the
might
mute
be
and
able
many
to just
others, and
leave
laid them at
these
his
up
feet, and he
through-
healed them.
Through here.
Yeah.
And the people
'cause they're
were
pretty back to
amazed when
back.
they saw the mute speaking and the crippled made well and
Let's-
the lame walking and the blind seeing. And look at this, and they praised the God of Israel. And this goes on for days. Verse 32, and Jesus called his
You
disciples to
got
him
the con.
Got it.
and said, I have compassion for these people. They've already been with me for 3 days. Now they don't have anything to eat. I don't want to send them away hungry, or they may collapse on the way. Now look at the disciples' response, verse 33. And his disciples answered, Jesus, we could not agree with you more. We are willing to do whatever it takes to make sure these people have something to eat. That's not what they said. I just made that up. It's not what they said. You're like, oh, I've never heard that part of the story before. No, I just made that up. That's what they should have said. Here's what they really said, verse 33. And his disciples answered, where could we get enough bread in this remote place to feed such a crowd? Now,
Ready,
know,
one.
you might hear that and go, this is interesting, because didn't we just have a feeding of
on.
thousands of people story in the chapter before? And you would be correct. So here we have it again, and the disciples go, Jesus, here's
Okay,
my
I'll
translation.
send you,
Jesus, that sounds like a lot of
14,
work.
14.
Got it.
That sounds like a lot of work. And we're kind of tired. And, and I think they kind of say this cheek and tongue a little bit, like Jesus, like wink, wink,
We're
and
gonna
where
do
are we
Matthew
going to
14,
get
14 and Matthew 15,
all the
32
food
back-to-back slides.
that's needed? Now, Jesus has to be there, and he's got to be listening to his guys. He's got to go, what? Gents, what did we just do in chapter 14? You were there. I think you were there. I mean, how are we going to get the bread? Do you remember just a chapter ago? A couple of days ago? I mean, this is like 4 days before. There was more people than are here today. And that's the excuse you want to use? I mean, we just fed 15,000 people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And now you're going to be complaining about feeding this group of people? And here's what I think. Did they forget? I don't really think they forgot. I just think they don't want to do it again. I think they're tired. And this is very interesting. And I don't think they really care about this group in chapter 15 the same way they cared about the group in chapter 14. So just think about this for a sec. Matthew, who's he's the author here. He wrote the gospel, this gospel, his gospel. And so he's writing down the stories of Jesus. And so in Matthew's gospel, he gives us 2 stories of feeding thousands of people. Same kind of story. We got, a story in chapter 14, we're feeding 5,000 people. And then we got a story in chapter 15 where we're feeding 4,000 people. That's interesting that of all the things that Matthew wants to, put in there, he puts these 2 stories. And whenever you see something like that, you should probably ask the question, I wonder why he did that. Why would he give us the same kind of miracle just 4 days apart? Why not just put the miracle in where they fed the most people, And the answer is, here's what I think. The answer is location of where these miracles are happening. I mean, these 2 miracles, they took place in different regions, which is very, very important to the story, because the first region where Jesus fed the 5,000, or really the 15,000, that group of people was primarily Jewish. He was in Jewish country. And then when you get to chapter 15, when he's feeding the smaller number of people, the 4,000 people, well, he's in Gentile country now. It's a whole different group of people. 14 was Jewish people, and 15 is Gentile people, meaning that in chapter 15, because the disciples, they're Jewish, and meaning that in chapter 15, this isn't a Jewish crowd, meaning these aren't their people. In fact, these people are very different than them. And I'm telling you, listen, I am telling you the reason why you know the name of a carpenter who lived 2,000 years ago, who started a movement halfway around the world, because Jesus fed both groups of people. That's why you keep hearing his name. He fed Jewish people, and he also fed Gentile people. He had compassion, not just for his people, but for all people. And that's what sets him apart. When you go back and look at the stories, chapter 14, and then when Jesus landed and he saw a huge crowd, he had what? Compassion. He had compassion for Jewish people. You go to chapter 15, and Jesus called his disciples to him, and he said, I have compassion for these Gentile people. I've got compassion for all people, which means, here's what I think, compassion is the key to meeting the needs of the people around you. But then you start thinking, how in the world did Jesus have compassion for everyone?
Something happened. Ready,
everyone. That's incredible.
Go on.
Easy to have compassion for people that are like you and, vote like you and talk like you and live like you.
Okay, so there's a slide.
But man, having compassion for all people.
Every need you saw was a need.
How do you do that? How do you have that kind of mindset that Jesus had? And here's how I think you do it. And I kid you not, guys, this past week on Monday night, I'm sitting out on the porch with my wife, and I'm out there, and we're just hanging out, and I'm preparing, the message for today. And I get to this point, I'm thinking, man, what story could I tell, that would help just reinforce this idea of the mindset and the way that Jesus just really viewed people, and my phone rings. It's about 7:45 at night. My phone rings, and I pick it up. And it's my oldest, Raya. And she got off of work about 7:30. And she was driving home, and on her way home, she got a flat tire. I mean, her tire exploded. And so she's on the side of the road. And here's what you need to know about Raya. She just got her license a week and a half ago.
Oh my.
So she's been pumped driving around.
That's the worst.
She's got a great used car, and so she calls me, and I see it, and she doesn't usually call me, and so I'm like, ooh, this is interesting. So I pick up, I go, girl, what's going on? And she, as a parent, when your kid is just, something's not right, and she's not in tears, but you can feel it, And she said, this is the first thing she says, Dad, I need you to come pick me up. So I'm like, whoa, okay, well, hold on, what's going on? She goes, I don't really know, but my tire, she's like, Dad, it's nothing left of the tire. I go, where are you? She says, I'm in such and such place of town. I said, I'm on my way. Close my computer. I tell my wife, hey, I think, Rye's got a flat tire. I just, I want to get there right away because I think she's really nervous. And so I get over there. Just a couple minutes later, I pull up right behind her car. Her tire did explode. And I go over to her, and you could just tell. I mean, she's just feeling it. She's feeling embarrassed, and she's nervous. She didn't know what to do. She's like, Dad, I didn't know what to do, and the car was just being weird. And so I just pulled over. I said, you made the right choice, right? And so I just give her a big hug. And here's the first thing I said to her. Hey, girl, you just got to know you're way more valuable to me than a tire. We'll fix the tire. Not a big deal. I'm just glad you're safe. So you did the right thing. You pulled over, and now we're going to fix this tire. And so then, I go into dad mode. You know what I'm saying? You dads know what I'm talking about. Now, I've never changed a tire in this car before because we just got this car. And so I start trying to find all the stuff, and I'm pulling all the stuff out. And let me just tell you, it's been a while since I changed a tire, okay? And so I'm there, and, it's starting to get dark, and there's people driving by who clearly I don't look like a guy who knows how to change a tire. And they're like, you need help? I'm like, I'm good. I'm good because I'm going to be the dad who rescues his daughter. So anyways, I'm there. We're going to figure it out. And I'm not figuring it out. And there's just certain things that I forgot about. And so this one guy is driving by. I've been there. We've been there for some time now. He drives by and he's like, hey, do you need help? And I just said, yeah, I do. He goes, yeah, I just live right across the street. Let me park, and I'm just going to come right over. And so this gentleman comes over, and I go, hey, I'm Matt. This is my daughter, Raya. This is her car. She was on her way home from work, and, the tire exploded. And he goes, yeah, well, let's change it. I go, yeah, I've been trying, but, it's tricky. It's tricky. And so he says, hey, my name's Josh. I go, Josh, it's nice to meet you. I'm Matt. He goes, hey, and so, we start trying to, change the tire. And so we're just chatting, and he's like, hey, what do you do for work? And I said, I'm a pastor. Then I made a pastor joke, like, we don't, whatever. So anyways, and he goes, what church? What church are you part of? I said, I'm a Rocky Mountain Christian Church. He's, oh, yeah, I've heard of that church. He goes, I'm a mechanic. And I said, wow, you're God. Like, God really helped me out tonight. Like, yeah, thanks. I'm like, dude, thanks so much for stopping. Thanks for stopping. I really need your help. And he says, I'm a mechanic. I work at Anderson Farms. I said, wow. I said, hey, our church, we were just out there. He's like, oh, yeah, that's right. And so we just, we start talking, and we get the tire changed, Get the tire changed, and we head home. And here's what I thought, and this is, you know this. If you're a parent, you get this. But when Raya, when she called me that night, when I picked up the phone, and she said, hey, Dad, need help? You know what I didn't do? I didn't go, sorry, too busy trying to write this sermon.
Yeah, I turned mine up a little
because there's people that need to hear it, and hang up. Hope you figure it out. Hang up. No. I stop what I'm doing. And you want to know why? She's my kid. She's my kid. Listen, you get this. My kid needs help with the tire. I'm there. And my kid's way more valuable than a tire. If there's a point in my life where someone's like, hey, you can choose, it's your life or her life, I would say, you take my life. That's easy. Because she's my kid. And this isn't just a one-time thing. If this week, if I'm at home and she calls me, and she's like, Dad, it happened again, my tire, blew up. And, I'd be like, hey, that's cool. Let me call Josh. Let me get him over there. No, it's not just a one-time thing, right? Like I'm going to meet as many needs as I can. Why? Because I'm her dad. And there's just something in you when it's your kids, the game changes. And I'm just telling you, I think this is the key to unlocking compassion in your life. Because when Jesus looks at you, you know what he sees? His kid. You're his kid. You're his son, you're his daughter. It's how he's able to have compassion for everybody. Not just some people, but all people. And then I started thinking about this question this week. There's probably a better way to word it, but this is what I just wrote down. How different would your day be
Thank you.
if every need you saw was a need of one of your kids? A lot of people drove by me. That's fine. I drive people that are broken down all the time, and I need to think about that more because now I know how to change tires.
All right, so he's going to read.
And yet a couple people
John 3:17
did stop.
next.
Got it.
if I was driving through town and I saw my kid, I would stop every single time. And if you're a Christian, you should think about this.
Ready to.
This is actually
go
a really
to.
big discussion. John, he writes this in 1 John chapter 3, verse 17. If somebody has enough money to live well and sees a brother or sister in need, but shows no compassion. Look at this next one. How can God's love be in that person? If you have more than what you need, and you see a need, but you just keep going right on by,
Go on.
and if you're a Christian,
All right. Looks like he's going to do
John
Matthew
says,
14,
pretty much,
again.
Got it.
you're not a Christian. That's what John says. How can compassion be in you? How can God's love be in you? That is so far from the heart of God. What good is your faith if you have no compassion? So here's like the decision you get to make in your life. You can be critical or you can be compassionate, but I don't think you can be both. You can be critical and make up a story about why that person deserves what they deserve, and they would have listened to you, and if they wouldn't use their money that way, and you start making all these excuses of why you're not going to help them. You can be critical or you can be compassionate, and you get to choose. And if you're a follower of Jesus, John would seem to think the choice has already been decided for you. It's compassion. So if you're lacking in a little bit of compassion, let me just give you two quick things and then we're done. Two things that are going to help you grow in your compassion. Here's number one. You need to ask Jesus to give you his eyes. That you would begin to see people as Jesus sees people and how he sees you. This is chapter 14, when Jesus landed and he saw the need, he saw the people, but he also saw his kids. He wasn't going to keep on moving by. Yes, he's tired, but that's not a good enough excuse because his kids got some needs.
He's like in the middle of it.
Yeah, there's other things I'd like to be doing than changing a tire on Monday night, but that's what I'm doing because my kids got the need.
Okay.
He sees his kids, and you could ask, well, what does compassion look like? Well, it looks like the one who saw a need and he met it.
Okay. Go on.
You could choose to be critical,
Ready
you can
to.
choose to be compassionate, and I'm telling you, if you would see
All right,
people how
15,
Jesus sees people,
32
you
will
would
be
choose
next.
compassion
Got it.
every single time. God, help me. Give me your eyes to see people as you see people. I don't even like that person. I think they're in the place
think
they're
he,
in
like,
because they
read
made
it,
so
but
many
didn't
poor
really
choices,
read
and
it.
yet if it
Yeah,
was my
I
kid,
agree.
I'd stop. Number two, you should ask the question, what would it be like to be you? What would it be like to be you? This is what Jesus does in Matthew chapter 15 with the
Ready
second
to.
group of people,
Go to.
the group of people that his disciples really are interested in serving. Look what it says, verse 32, and Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I have compassion for these people too. They've already been with me 3 days and they have nothing to eat. And you could start being critical and go, well, they should have figured that out. If they were going to go to this rally
doing
for
the same thing?
Jesus, they should have
Kinda
brought some
reading
food
it,
with
but
them.
not.
That's on them. Look what Jesus does. He asks a
don't
question.
know.
Hey, I wonder what it would be like to be someone in the crowd. And look what he
Okay.
says. I do not want to send them away hungry or they may
Oh.
collapse
Yeah.
on the way.
So he's asking the
I
question.
wonder what it's like to hear me teach for 3 days and run out of food. I wonder what it's going to
Ready,
be
one.
like then when they're walking home. Hey, I
Go on.
hope they're all able to get home safely. See, Jesus puts himself in their shoes. And he goes, look, I see a need because now
All
I'm
right, so he's going to
I'm
bounce
with
back
them.
to 1531.
what are they going to
Got
do
it.
for food?
Thank you.
You can be critical or you can be compassionate, but you can't be both. I'm just telling you, if you choose compassion, it is so helpful to get in that person's shoes. You can be critical or you can ask the question. Hey, what would it be like to have that disability? What would it be like to have those parents? That mom? I wonder what it would be like to grow up with a dad who drinks too much. Man, I wonder what it would be like to live over there in that part of town, or live over there in that country halfway around the world. Wonder what it would be like to feel the pressure of bills stacking up and not know how you're going to pay them. You can be critical or you can be compassionate. Notice I didn't say that you should worry about what that person believes or worry about their politics or their view of marriage. You just lead with compassion. You see a need and you meet it. Because when you do, people take notice. This is why we keep talking about Jesus. Jesus had compassion and it allowed people to see God differently. Here's a really cool thing. We kind of, we go right by this in this story. But in Matthew chapter 15, you have this Gentile group of people. They're not Christians. They're not followers of Jesus. They're just there because they got needs. They got a brother who can't walk. They got an aunt who can't see. And they're bringing all these people to Jesus. And look at this, verse 31. The people were amazed when they saw the mute speaking and the crippled made well and the lame walking and blind seeing. Notice it didn't say, we were so amazed with Jesus' teaching. Look what it says. And they praised the God of Israel. Now, why does Matthew word it like that? Because he's telling you these are not Israel people.
Ready, one.
We have Gentiles who are showing up with needs, and Jesus is meeting one need at a time. And then the group of people go, wow.
All right, last one. Forward
This
the
God
one.
is for real. This God is
This is a
legit,
lot
man.
of-
This God of Israel.
A lot of lower thirds.
He's something.
I know.
And it says they praised him. That would be so radical. All these Gentiles coming from different pagan religions, and they're coming because they have needs, and nobody else can meet the need, but there is
3
this
minutes
one
over
guy
right now.
who could,
Not too bad.
and he did. If you're part of the church, we have this incredible mission to steward, like to love one person at a time by meeting one need at a time. And I'm just telling you, if we would do that more in the context of how we individually live our lives, and if we would do that more as a church, as a community, and just getting into our community and meeting people and meeting, people's needs, one need at a time. I'm just telling you, more people, I think, would come to the conclusion that would read like this. And they don't even understand it all, but they praised. They praised the God of that church. Because nobody else was showing up. Nobody else was meeting the need. Nobody else was paying the bill. But for some reason, that church down the road did. And see, that stands out. That's pretty remarkable. Because not a lot of other people are doing that. If Jesus was up here, you could interview Jesus. Jesus, what does it look like for the church to be for the one, What's it look like to be compassionate?
Oh, he's doing the
Here's what I think he
last
would say.
things,
Well,
right?
it's really, really simple. It's really, really simple. Look, don't complicate it. Don't put on these other rules. And don't worry about excuses.
said
Here's
it,
what I
but
want you to do.
A couple times.
Here's what I want you to do. If you're going to be for the one, here's what I want you to do. If you're going to be that kind of person, okay? A compassionate person is the person. It's the one who sees a need and he meets it. Well, what are all the rules? Don't worry. No, come on. It's when you see a need and you meet it. That's compassion. Well, what about, when I'm driving? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. When you just see you see somebody in need and you can meet the need because you have more than what you need, you should meet it. Okay. Every time.
Yeah, he
Jesus, what's it look like, to be
goes
compassionate?
quick sometimes. And you're like, whoa,
In our
what?
community, in our workplace. And Jesus would say something like this. Compassion looks like this. It's the one when they see a price that needs to be paid, they pay it. Every time. When you see somebody doesn't have enough, and you got more than
I don't
what
think
you
we all
need, and
leave
you
it
can
up to
pay
this
it, you
whole
should
thing.
pay it.
So,
No, that would be.
But what if they've mismanaged your money, Jesus? Because it doesn't matter. I'm just telling you. If you've got compassion in your heart and you're a follower of me, if you see a price, if you see a bill,
exactly.
and you know that person is struggling to pay, you should pay it. Jesus, what's compassion like? Okay, it's just like this. Look, it's the person who sees a need that they can meet. It's a person that has more than what they need. And it's the person who doesn't talk themselves out of it. That's
You wanna
compassion.
lock and rack, right?
That's pretty good. And here's what I love about Jesus. And we'll end with this. And if you're not a follower of him, you should be. And here's why.
I'm trying to figure out where we're going.
Because Jesus would get in front of his disciples and he would teach
yeah,
them
we're
these
gonna
principles
do the
of compassion and being
closing
for the
credits
one.
slide
If you see a need, you should meet it. If there's a
after his prayer.
bill you can pay, you should pay it.
Sayonara speech.
And you should stop trying to find a way out
That'll
of it.
work. Yep, that will work. Thank you for the reminder.
And what does he do? What does he do? Listen, this is why I'm a Christian. I'm just telling you, this is why I'm a Christian. Here's why I'm a Christian. Because Jesus, he saw a need.
6:20 over.
And he met it. What was our need? Well, we didn't have a right relationship with God. We were sinners. We didn't get it right. We're not perfect. And Jesus knew it, and he saw it. You know what he said? I couldn't meet that need. And then he got to question 2. Well, what's the price? Well, the price is hefty. Jesus, if you meet the need, if you're going to cover all the sins of the world, if you're going to take care of Matt's stuff, and your stuff, the price is your life. Jesus knew it, and he paid it. And then, if you don't think that's a big decision, if you don't think there was a way that he could have talked himself out of it, then you should go read the story when Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, praying with the Father, knowing the price that will be paid, knowing the magnitude of the need that needed to be met. And Jesus will even ask the Father, hey, is there any other way? And the Father will say to the Son, nope. That's the need. That's the price. And Jesus will stand up and he will walk out of that garden and he will never look back. That's why I'm a Christian. And you just got to know, Jesus this morning, he sees you. Come on, he sees you. You are his kid. And here's what I love about Jesus. He knows what it's like to be in your shoes. He walked on this planet, just like you. It's why he's able to show so much compassion. So this morning, why don't we think about it a little bit more? Of how to live a life full of compassion. And may we be compassionate just like Jesus, who demonstrated it for us 2,000 years ago. It's why we keep talking about it. Let me pray for you. Father, this morning we thank you for a gospel, a story about who you are, that we believe to be true. And the reason why we keep talking about it is because it's so remarkable. A God who would send his son to this earth, filled with compassion when he didn't have to, left the glory of heaven for the reality of earth. He would die, meeting the needs of the very people who were crucifying him. But you did it.
You get a green light when I
And you met it.
prep it.
And you paid for it. And so I pray that your church this morning, as we walk out of these buildings and as we
Not yet.
click offline,
Not
we
yet.
got a choice to make this week. We can be people that are critical or compassionate.
I'll cut off his prayer
And
with
I
the,
pray that we
you know,
would see people as
music
you
that
see
starts
people.
up in there when I click that.
That we
Yeah.
might pause in the midst of our criticism and go,
I'm
you
sure
know
he
what, I
wouldn't do
wonder
that.
what it's like
That would be bad.
to be in that person's shoes. You would give us a different perspective, that you would help us see this whole thing as you see it. We thank you for seeing us with eyes full of compassion. You did for us what we couldn't do for ourselves. Now, in turn, may we go and do likewise for the needs that we see. Father, we love you, and we thank you for Jesus, and it's in his name we pray. Amen. Hey, thanks for hanging out with us this week. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Get that Sunday nap. And on the way home, if you see a pastor who doesn't know how to change a tire, help him out. Have a good week. We'll see you
Ready,
next
CG?
time.
Dissolve CG. Oops. Dissolve CG. There we go.
Oh,
Thank you guys. Nice work.
One down.
Hey. DD's off.